Tēnā koutou katoa no mai haere mai. Today, Joe and I are chatting about some of the things that have come up in our mobilise sessions. So when we're talking about allyship, inclusive leadership, when we've got rooms full of leaders and rooms full of men, some of the common conversations are, potentially challenging conversations we often have, which have been really impactful. I've loved the corridor in this space, and I've loved the difference when we've had groups that are open to discussing it versus groups that are more defensive. And there's always a mixture in that space, right? But as soon as you say the word privilege, there are many different responses. And I reckon that particularly in the media, privilege has kind of got itself a bad name. There is, particularly for white men, there is this threat around, or this accusation, or this negative connotation. And I know that in our corridor, we've kind of explored what we're actually talking about here when we talk about privilege is power. And yet power has this positive connotation that we can relate to and go, oh yeah, well, that doesn't sound so bad. And if we have privilege, we have power. And yet for many men, and we've had to navigate these conversations quite carefully, because as soon as you say privilege, we've had examples where people have said to us, are you saying that I've only got where I am because of my privilege? Because I've worked damn hard in my career to get where I am. And yes, that's the truth, right? Having privilege does not take away from any of the skills that we have, the experience that we bring, the challenges that we've had to overcome. You can have privilege and still have had challenge as well, and still have worked hard to get where you are. There will be it's almost like tailwinds. There will be other challenges that you've not faced, which underrepresented groups may have. And I love this concept that privilege is fact, not fault, because I feel like it takes away some of that defensiveness. I'm a woman and I'm a member of the rainbow community, and I still have privilege because I'm white and I'm able-bodied. And I think as soon as we get to the space where we can admit, yep, I've got privilege, that doesn't make me wrong, but it does mean I have an opportunity, right? Because there's almost this responsibility that comes with privilege. But if my voice is louder, I need to use it. And I need to use it in a way that supports those that do not have privilege. And I feel as soon as the defensiveness goes away from this word privilege, and we start to accept that, we're all weathering the same storms, but potentially many of us are in different boats. As soon as we get to that space, I feel like we're more open to being able to understand, right, how do I use this privilege in a positive way?
Mm, totally agree, Jess. It's such a interesting conversation, which is coming up a lot in our workshops around privilege, and it has this visceral reaction often to it, which is interesting. My observation is it has this sort of shame trigger to it, and this accusation of blame, that because I might be in a majority group, I'm being blamed for some of the unequal outcomes that we're seeing in our workplaces and across our economy. And that you are saying by the term privilege that I've had an armchair ride, that you're not valuing the lived experience that I've had, even though I am in a majority group, and that I might have had it tough. Absolutely. The point, and I love this fact, not fault concept, because if we kind of de-weaponize the term privilege and actually just examine what we're talking about, it's not about creating shame for those people that hold privilege across the dimensions of their identity. It's about acknowledging that the system that we're operating within has bias within it, and that everyone is having a different experience based on their identity. And so, I talk about my own privilege, that I hold privilege against every dimension of my identity. So I'm a white-skinned Anglo-European Pākehā heterosexual man who's able-bodied and neurotypical in a higher socioeconomic group, with access to education. And so everywhere that I go, inside and outside the workplace, I'm safe, I'm expected, I'm welcomed, and I'm supported. And my experience in my career has been that everywhere I've worked, I've looked up into the organization and seen people that look like me, that have mentored and sponsored me into particular positions, that I know how to interact with them. I know how to talk rugby with other guys to build connection. I know how to do that. I know how to go out for a beer with those senior leaders in order to to build relationships and network and be successful that way. And so that's not about me saying I'm shameful about my own identity. That's me leaning into that and talking about it is about saying I acknowledge that is the operating environment that I'm operating within, and that I have certain privilege because of my identity. Now, the question then is, with privilege comes responsibility. So how will I use that privilege for good? How might I use the power that I have within that system to create space for others and look to break down barriers that exist within our system? And that won't just be good for those people, the underrepresented groups that are facing additional barriers that I'm not facing. My lived experience is when you do that work, you're better off as well. I'm better off because of that, because it creates all sorts of positive benefit around your own self-realization, around your own identity, and you can develop this kind of grounded confidence in who you are as well, which makes you a better leader. Back at work.
Yeah. Yeah, and what I've noticed, particularly in the conversations we've been having, is those with that grounded confidence, those that are comfortable in their own skin, those that understand their own story, are so much more open to then having the conversation about privilege, but then doing something with it and accepting that responsibility. And I feel like, yes, having privilege doesn't invalidate your success, but with it comes that responsibility then to look at others that are having different experiences and use your privilege to support those people, to be an ally, we have allowed a voice in the equity space. And so therefore there's this pressure then to use it, I guess. And I feel like it's but the best description I've heard of this is that it's kind of like the absence of certain struggles. Having privilege doesn't necessarily mean your life has been easy. Understanding your privilege can help us realize that some people's lives are harder. And I think that's the key here. It's not a personal attack, it's just a reality of these are how our societies are structured the world over. And if we've been lucky enough to win the privilege lottery, then how do we, rather than, like the shame piece that can often be associated with that, how do we then go, okay, well, this is great for me. And then how do I then use that as an opportunity to help those who it's not been so great for?
Yeah. And what we're talking about a lot to the allies and inclusive leaders that we're coaching and working with is around building a diverse network. So your opportunity to be an inclusive leader and actually understand more about yourself in terms of how other people are having a different lived experience to you is to spend time with them, to spend time with people that don't look and feel like you. So spend time with people that are different cultures and ethnicities to understand and observe their lived experience and some of the barriers that they might be facing that you aren't facing, different sexual orientations, different gender identities, so that because I don't think that you will fully understand that unless, well, first of all, you will never really understand that in terms of you haven't had that lived experience, but spending time with people that are different to you will really build your understanding of other people's lived experience, but it also helps you to reflect on your own lived experience and how that is different to theirs. And so I think that building your diverse network is such a big element of becoming an inclusive leader, because you'll just learn a lot from other people.
Yeah, 100%. And I feel like if this is something that's piqued your interest, then the Mobilize program is a great place to start. I feel like it's been a privilege for me, I think, to watch this corridor unfold in the groups that we've been facilitating, and to see the impact of it as well. When you've got men in a space where they're being really vulnerable and senior leaders talking about their own experience and what they've learned from this, and it's a really impactful conversation to have. But as we've observed, we don't really have space in our existing working lives and structures or the existing leadership development that we do to really have this corridor. And it's been so valuable for the men in the room to actually have the space to to be heard, to be acknowledged, to actually delve into this and ask the
Yeah.
questions, right, that they've always had, and seeing the impact. Because in my experience, most people are open to being better humans, and are keen, therefore, and want to know, well, how can I be a better human? How do I be an ally for others? And I think giving them the tools and the tips and the strategies in this space is something that I'm really enjoying about the work that we're doing.
Yeah, same here, Jess. It is a real privilege to be in there because what we're finding out is that particularly men are really appreciating a space to be having these conversations, which is safe for them, which is different to inside a traditional workplace context where it's not really safe to be having some pretty confronting conversations about merit, about are targets the right way to go? Let's examine privilege, all of those sorts of things, and actually have a critical eye to some of those concepts as well, and have a robust, authentic conversation about those in order to both get a few things off your chest, but also get past that. So then you can say, well, how might I tool myself up in terms of my leadership capability to be relevant in the future of work, considering all of these demographic changes, the ways that we're working differently now, that I'm not just relying on my technical skill set, that I'm building my leadership capability in some of those vertical growth areas. So yeah, I think that part of the workshop is really landing really well. That space where people can actually be really honest, where we ask them the question, like, this is your time to ask any question, make a statement, make an observation about diversity and inclusion and how it's impacting you, how you might be frustrated about it, how you might think it's not going in the right direction. Let's have a conversation about that, because unless we do, we'll have this dissonance between the conversation that we're having at work. Yes, of course, I'm a supporter of diversity and inclusion. Out of work, I've got real questions around this, and I kind of think it's all going woke and it's all going a bit crazy. And so, if we can get past that, that's when we'll start to see a more of a uniting of our workforce and our community about equity issues, where people can actually lean into their role that they might be able to play, and the people in the majority groups have this opportunity. If we mobilize people in the majority groups to really think about their privilege as a responsibility, as an opportunity to create space for others, give voice to others, then I think we're going to make much faster progress in terms of some of those stubborn challenges that we're facing in terms of inequity across our society. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. And having that corridor to start with opens everybody up then to the, okay, how do I use my privilege? Now I've got a few things off my chest. Now we've had this corridor. What do I do? And that's been, people are so keen and mobilized to know, what are the strategies? How do I make this work? How do I get better in this space? And yeah, check out the Men as Allies website for more information on the Mobilize program. You'll see the link at the end here of this clip. It's been a pleasure, Joe, as always, to put it all with
Jess.
you. Love doing this work. And yeah, look forward to the next time.